All right, here we are. Welcome to the webinar, 3 Steps to Focus Your Story and Unlock Customer Growth. We are excited that you are here, and we thank you for attending this webinar live, hopefully. And I am Jessica Van Roekel, and I am a jack of all trades, master of none, I guess you could say. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, worship leader, writer, and sales rep for Fist Bump Media. And I'm here with Dan King, president of Fist Bump Media. And we're here to bring you a webinar that is going to teach you to learn how to use your story and the story of your customers to build deeper relationships and reach more people. So Dan, can you just tell me a little bit about yourself and share some background? You're the president, our resident expert of all things Fist Bump Media.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jessica. So for Fist Bump Media, we've actually been around and open for business and everything for about 6 years, but really our roots go back a little bit longer than that. I started developing, I think, my first website. I don't know if anybody remembers this or anything, too, using like what was it, Front Page or something like that, or whatever, to a little Microsoft software or something to create websites back in the mid to late 90s and stuff. And so I've played around with web design for a little while. But more importantly, I think especially related to what we're talking about today, I've been a blogger now for about 12 years myself, and I think a lot of what we believe as an organization, not only for like writers and bloggers and stuff too, but for small businesses and medium businesses and stuff, really kind of has its root in what I've done as a blogger for a long time, and what a lot of people do as bloggers, right? We go out there and we tell stories, mm-hmm. and those stories I've always found are the things that really ultimately kind of connect us. You see a lot of people in the blogging community, they connect it because they can relate. When I write a story that resonates with you, that just helps us develop a relationship and stuff. Which is great for building community as a writer, but especially as a small business. It's getting increasingly difficult these days to try to get noticed and get found, especially online, because it's just such a noisy place. So it's not about trying to find ways to sell stuff to people. It's about trying to find ways to build relationships with people. And that's the thing, really. It's those stories that kind of connect us and stuff that helps us develop those kinds of relationships and stuff too, where those people can eventually become customers. But we're not leading out there with this whole kind of big mentality of I must sell all the things to all the people. It's just about building relationships and creating something special, and then going from there. If I can help you in a kind of a customer client relationship, then yeah, let's do that. But let's talk and connect first. And that's what's really I think kind of driven a lot of stuff for us. And we'll get into some details about that throughout the course of this webinar, but that's really what's driven things for us as Fist Bump Media, and we found with a lot of our clients and stuff too. So
okay. That sounds sets up really great for the first section of our webinar of identifying the story that really drives our message. How do we do that? I know, when we start a business, we've got this drive and we want to engage with people. And so we put ourselves out there, and we realize it is a really noisy world. There's, we put our shingle out and discover that there's probably half a dozen more people 2 blocks over and another block over that are doing the same thing. And so we really have to come back down to that story that drives us. So Dan, can you talk to us about the story that drives our messaging? And I know that there are 2 parts to this. So let's cover the first one. What does this look like? How to find our story, and how do we pull this out?
Yeah, and that's great. So for anybody who's been on any of these webinars and stuff before, you may have already heard this story too, but it's a really great one. And I think in other webinars, I may have shared a little bit of this story too. And I said, oh, we could talk for hours about this one. Well, this is one of those we're going to talk for a long time about this piece and stuff, right? But it's one of my favorite stories because it really illustrates some of the stuff really well. But as it relates to our own story and kind of finding that, discovering that, I got to talk about my father-in-law, Amos the roofer, right? And when we started Fist Bump Media, he was one of our first clients, probably because he wanted to make sure he was helping take care of his daughter when it was on like launching this new thing and stuff. But we were talking about what he does and working out some of the web strategy and everything for him. And I was telling him, I says, he knows he's not the cheapest roofer in town, right? There are a lot of people who can do a roof for a lot less money than what he does, but he's got a certain standard that he lives to and stuff, So I keep asking him, I said, if you're not the cheapest guy in town, you're really going to win based on connecting with people, right? And so I asked him, I said, knowing it's your story that's going to connect you with people and stuff. I'm like, Amos, what's your story? And he's like, I don't have a story, right? And I'm like, no, I know you've got one. What is the story? What is it that really drives you for what you do? Why do you do things the way you do? He says, listen, I don't have a story. Here's all I know. All I know is that when I was a kid, right? He grew up horse and buggy Amish up in Iowa. You're from Iowa, Jessica. So, but he grew up horse and buggy Amish in Iowa. And he tells me, he says that, I used to build things with my dad, and he was built things with really such great quality that they would last a long time. And he says back then, he says there were two kinds of people that you could hire to put a roof on your house. There were your con men and there were your craftsmen. The con men were the ones that might come out and give you a price, take your deposit, maybe not even show back up again. But even if they do, they're probably just putting on just whatever they can slap on for as little money as they can to try to maximize, the amount of money they kind of take out of that stuff and not really care even how long it lasts, right? He says, then there are your craftsmen, right? Your craftsmen were the ones that took a lot of pride in the work that they did. And they built something that was going to last a long time. Because it was done well, right? And he says, and that's what my father always taught me. He taught me to be a craftsman and to do things well and build things that would last. He says, but you got this problem with this comment. So the government steps in and they say, we got to do something about this. So you know what? We're going to set a standard. If you want to put a roof on somebody's house, you have to get a license, right? You have to be a licensed roofing contractor if you're going to put a roof on somebody's house. So they set that bar, but he says, but what they did is they set the minimum bar that people ultimately live up to, right? He says that really, it got rid of the con men, right? But he says, but still, what happened to the craftsmen, right? And I'm like, this is your story. This is it. This is it. This is how you're going to connect with people. People can relate to you because this is what drives you, So the whole thing about really identifying your own story is a part of this whole thing too. And again, this is really only half of kind of what we're talking about, right? Is how do we pull that out? And I think it's just a matter of you need to continue to ask yourself why you do what you do, right? Those are questions I can answer, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit too as well. But that I can answer for our own business, but as a business owner, as a brand, as a nonprofit, any of these things, you need to be able to answer that question: why do I do what I do? There's got to be some kind of driving factor, some kind of story behind what makes you get there. So that's the big thing for identifying your story and pulling that out, in understanding that is the root for what you do.
Okay, so what you're telling us as business owners and brands is to really dive in and figure out why we're doing what we're doing, whether it's a story from our childhood or maybe it's an example you saw your grandfather live up to. My grandfather was a mechanic and he knew engines. He could listen and he would know exactly what was going on. And there was a story that one of the motor dealerships that he worked for up in Spokane put a big sign on his shop that said Kiwi is back. And that was their story because they knew that what he could do. And so to find the story is all about asking why. Why are you washing windows? Why are you wiring homes? Why are you plumbing homes? Why are you building homes? Or why are you selling people homes? These are, get to the bottom of the why. Okay, so if we know our why, what about the customer? How do we tie our why to the customer's journey? Because it's not just about us.
Right. Exactly.
We're wanting to serve someone. So how do we use our story to find the customer story to serve them?
Exactly. You know, and the customer story is really, it's probably the most important one, right? You know, and when I say customer, you know, I mean, if you're a writer, you're talking about your readers on the end, maybe somebody who might buy a book from you at some point, right? If you're a nonprofit, you know, it's you know, you're probably talking about donors that might help you, you know, raise the funds you need to raise to, you know, do great things all around the world. You know, if you're a business, it's finding your customers and stuff, right? But those people, and I'm just going to kind of call them customers in general here. Those customers, their stories are probably the most important ones in this whole equation, right? As important as it is to understand your own story, it's more important to understand theirs, all right? You know, and to illustrate this one, I think a great example too is just what we do with Fist Bump Media, right? You know, I started Fist Bump Media because, well, partially just because I needed some work, right? You know, and I knew there were some things that I was really good at, you know, and I had a lot of things going for me with what we were doing in social media, and you know, I had my own books and stuff like that coming out, self-published one and traditionally published one coming out around the same time and stuff, but ultimately, when I was going through the process of figuring out what it is that I'm going to do, you know, I've been a faith-based blogger and writer for a long time too, and a lot of my network and a lot of our initial clients, you know, came from that same kind of faith-based writer kind of community and stuff, you know. So I worked with a lot of them, and what I found that I was doing with them, in how I was serving them, right, is that every one of those clients and those early customers for us, they had some message, right, that they felt was really important that they needed to share with the world, right? You know, some kind of insight into, you know, again, with the faith-based community, you know, into God's character or whatever stuff too, and the big thing, the big struggle that they had is they didn't know how to accomplish getting their story into as many people's hands as they could, right? And I had the technical expertise and knowledge that they lacked, right? You know, they may be a great writer, but they didn't know anything about developing a website or managing their social media platforms or putting together their book, you know, in the right formatting and everything to be able to self-publish it, for example, right? You know, they lack the technical expertise to be able to do that. So what I found is that I kind of came alongside them, and there's this beautiful story, right, in Genesis, and it's about the Israelites and stuff, and Joshua, you know, fighting against the Amalekites. And Moses there, and he's sitting up on the hill and stuff too, and when he's raising his hands up, right, you know, Joshua is winning, right, you know, they're defeating, you know, the enemy there and stuff, you know, but when his hands go down, then the Amalekites start winning, right, and so two guys, right, Aaron and Hur, you know, they come alongside Moses and stuff, and they bring up a big rock Moses can sit down on stuff too, but you know, Moses trying to hold up his arms, but you know, hold up your arms for a certain they're gonna get tired, right? You know, so Aaron and Hur, you know, they lifted up and held up Moses's arms so that he could keep his arms up longer and stuff. And what I discovered and what we were doing with Fist Bump Media is we were being that Aaron, right? We were being that Aaron, lifting up the arms of all of the Moses out there that had some message, something that they wanted to communicate. And you know, what's really interesting too is you know, I've had some clients who have just said, hey, you know, I appreciate so much what you're doing, you know, and I'm like, listen, I appreciate what you're doing. You know, you've got a great story, you've got a great message that needs to be shared with the world. And I just want to do my part to help you get it out there. And I told them this thing about, you know, how I kind of feel like I identify with Aaron and being able to lift up their arms and stuff. And so the people that I've shared that story with, they've become some of our greatest raving fans for what we do. And, so even then, when they understand kind of, how I'm helping enable their story and empower their story, right? That's the big thing, how do we do this, right? How do we identify this too? It's just really kind of taking a step back and saying, you know what? First of all, it's not about me, right? It's about my customers. What's the journey that they're on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the big question that we need to ask, to try to figure out our customers and stuff is what is the journey that they're on, and how can we help them, whatever that might look like and stuff, right? But it's discovering that path. But in order to do that, you kind of need to know who those customers are. Who is the ideal customer for what it is that you're trying to do? What does that person look like? What do they care about? In marketing, we talk about kind of building a buyer persona or something like that, so to say. But it's just knowing who they are, and what their life is like, and then you can kind of come in and help support that on their journey.
Okay, so our first step is knowing what our story is.
Mm-hmm.
Second step is to really know where the customer is at on their journey and helping them tell their story. Okay, right. So this is the risk or the trap, I guess, that sometimes you finally figure out your story, because I've asked the why question and I've been like, nah, that's not it. Oh, this might be it. Oh, no, that's not it. Oh, this might be it. No, that's not it. And then, oh, this is it. And you're excited because you figured out your own story. Mm. And it's easy in that excitement to lose sight of the fact that our story is really just a way to serve our customers, way to serve someone else. And so I think there's a really key element that we have to remember when we discover our stories and when we are understanding the customer's story. Can you talk about it's a really important element that helps us remember where our story and their story intertwine. Can you share those with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So to help kind of illustrate this a little bit too, I think it's important. Let's go back to the Sunshine Roofing story, right? The Sunshine Roofing story. We understand that Amos, he's a craftsman, right? He's going to build a better roof, right? But now then let's kind of think of the customer side of that too. Why does that really matter then to that customer? And the big thing is you kind of step back and look at that example. Who is the customer who needs the roofing services? Who needs Amos the roofer? And it's that guy, is that homeowner sitting around, and it started raining. He's hearing the tap, 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 tap of the water on the ceiling and stuff. And or sees the dripping coming down the walls and the water stains in the drywall and stuff, by the bathroom near the kids' rooms, whatever. And it's that person, right? So that person isn't necessarily going, oh, I need a craftsman, right? So that they don't have that aha yet, So I think understanding their journey, it's like, hey, if I'm just Joe homeowner and I'm noticing some problems here too, and I want to make sure, gosh, we just bought this house 3 years ago or something like that too, and we're going to live here a long time. My kids are going to grow up here and they're going to go to high school and stuff like that too. I need to make sure that this place is not going to fall apart on me, right? So if you kind of look at what I'm doing, I created that kind of persona, right? Who is this guy? Is Joe homeowner, right? And I'm starting to kind of discover what his issues are and stuff too, and think about what are the things he's going to care about. I want to make sure I've got a roof on this house that's going to last a long time, right? So I think then that's where we start to kind of look at how our stories can kind of connect a little bit and go, oh, okay, well, if Joe homeowner wants to make sure he puts a roof on his house and isn't going to have to deal with leaks again in 5 years or something like that too, he's going to want a roof that's going to last, and be here for a long time and not have to keep redoing this thing and stuff too. He's going to need somebody who does a quality job. He's going to need a craftsman, right? So I think that's the shift. When you really fully understand that customer story and their journey and their path, then you start to figure out then too, how you, with your story, can kind of come alongside them to connect and this is how we're going to make this work, right?
Right. Right. So really what our role is as brands or business owners is really to be the guide.
Yes.
So we're not the hero of our customer story.
Right.
Right. Okay. So can you dive into us and explain that, just unpack that concept a little bit more? I sometimes think, we've got a great story, we've got a great product, we've got a great message. Let me be your hero. But let's flip that and let's let our customer be the hero, and we be their guide. So can you unpack that just a little bit?
Yeah, exactly. Right. So and that's the crazy thing about story, right? And if you think about this, think about any Pixar, Disney movie or anything like that too you've ever seen, right? They're going to have a lot of these elements and stuff too. But when you think about it, and when I mentioned understanding that customer story, why it's probably the single most important piece is because it's the customer who's the hero. And this is where a lot of people really, I think, get it wrong as it relates to finding their story and stuff. Amos the roofer as a craftsman, that's a great thing to help kind of support what he wants to do. But that, if he goes out and says, look at me, I'm the craftsman, I'm the best in the world, nobody's really going to care, right? Nobody's going to care if he's trying to make himself out to be the hero, right? So it's the customer really. It's just it's the reader, the person who's going to buy your book. It's the donor on the other side for the nonprofit. The paying customer for businesses and stuff too, who needs to be the hero of the story, right? So as you kind of start crafting out your marketing messages and stuff, right? It's thinking about how can I put them in the position where they're going to be the hero. It's their journey that I really need to kind of come alongside and be the guide, right? So every big picture, I think of like Finding Nemo and stuff, and there's Marlin the fish, going off to try to find his son, and who does he have? He's got Dory along his side, helping give him some of the crazy whacked out insight and wisdom and stuff that he needs to be able to find the strength to go do the thing he needs to do. And so there's always that guide element too. That the hero always has a guide in the story that kind of comes alongside them to help complement them in what they do. And as your role as a business owner or brand owner or anything like that too, nonprofit leader, something like that too, is to figure out how with your story you can be that guide and position yourself that way to help elevate that customer on the other end to be the hero.
Awesome. That's great. Okay, so we've covered discovering our story, identifying the story that drives your message, connecting it with your customer, being the guide and not their hero, setting your customer up to be their own hero with you as their guide. Okay, so once we've figured that out, the second piece of the puzzle is really to connect. Let's talk about how we can connect and use some digital marketing strategies and offline marketing strategies to really connect with customers using the story and the discovery process that we went through.
Yeah, it was great. So with the as it relates to digital marketing, right, which is where we kind of specialize. There's the two pieces of that they're the big ones are the website design, the core website design, and the social media, right? Social media we're going to dig into a little bit in a second too, because that has more to do with our last big section here and everything, with really amplifying the voice and stuff too. But I will say that it's important, that even every social media message that you post should help kind of support this idea of finding your customer, whatever, in their journey, right? And how can you kind of help support, kind of be a guide for them and stuff, right? The more you can position yourself in all of your messaging with social media or whatever to be that guide voice, the better off you're going to be with being able to reach some of those customers and stuff too. But the bigger thing here with really using your story and stuff in those your customers' journey and stuff too to really connect with those customers is the website design, right? And I think, just like we kind of mentioned before too, this whole idea of it's not about you, right? It's about the hero, right? Who is the hero? We've already just identified that's the person on the other side, right? Who needs your support, who needs your guidance and stuff to be able to do what they're trying to accomplish on their journey and stuff, right? And also too, I think a lot of people from a web design perspective try to get too complex and stuff. You need to be very simple, very clear about your messaging and how you're going to try to help somebody, with their journey and stuff. There are too many websites, whether they're even bloggers, writers, nonprofits, business websites and stuff. All try to kind of come off with this perspective of, look at me, look at why I'm so great, right? If you buy my stuff, it'll help you, right? And honestly, people are tired of that message, and it's not really going to connect deeply with anybody, right? So I'll even screen share real quick too, because I keep talking about, Amos the Roofer. So kind of show it here real quick too, but this is their homepage, right? and really the big lead off message that you see on this, the main part of this page and the top of this page is making your roof last longer, right? Extending your, even the subtext, extending your roof's useful life helps you make the most of your roofing investment, right? So here's the thing, there's not a word in there about really them, right? You can kind of imply, oh, I'm here, they must be talking about how they can help me. But the focus of everything here is all about, that customer. It's making your roof last longer. It's about, extending the life of your roof and improving your roofing investment, right? So those are the things, that we really try to focus on. And then, oh yeah, there's that blurb, right? About, we do this through better understanding your roof's needs, using superior materials and, and craftsmanship and proper ongoing maintenance, right? So those are some of the things that we do to help you do what you want to try to do. Here's another example too. This is another client of ours, right? He's a real estate agent. Just so you can kind of see some comparison here and stuff too, right? And this is somebody who focuses on luxury real estate, kind of high-end real estate and stuff, in the kind of beachy waterfront areas and stuff around here. But helping you buy and sell luxury homes on the Florida Suncoast, representing your best interest every step of the way, right? And what's one of the big calls to action there is abundance of home selling checklist. Oh, okay, that's a tool to help me, right, as the customer, right, figure out how I can better position myself and stuff to sell my house, right? So those are a couple of examples of using the website to focus on delivering the message that focuses more on that customer than it does on you, right? It's obvious, it's apparent. I'm on a real estate agent's website. They can help me do this, right? But I'm the one who wants to buy as a customer. I'm the one who wants to buy, a certain kind of home, waterfront condo or something like that too. This is the person who can help me in my journey, right? So from a web design perspective, keep it really simple. It's got to be very clear, and then focus on their journey, right? Where are they at, and then how can you provide the messaging that's going to, help them self-identify that this is the path that I'm on, and that's where I need to go.
Yeah, I think what I loved about seeing those examples is that it gave us a nice visual of how to message our story in such a way that serves that customer. I love that, help your roof last longer. The supporting that really is Amos's desire that he's a craftsman.
Right.
It's not flat out written there, but he framed his story in such a way that indicates that my roof is going to last longer. If you hire me, right, my work is going to last longer, meaning your roof is going to last longer. So I thought that was just a really wonderful example. So keep our website simple, meaning question, can you go too simple? Is there a point where it's too blah? Too
Yeah.
simple, simple versus plain. Simple. What I loved about simple is you saw all the information on one screen. You didn't have to scroll through 10 different pages to get to, the information. Is that kind of what you're meaning by simple?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things there too is you don't want to try to overwhelm people and come out with like, blah, 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 here's my life story, here's your life story, and here's, all the stuff, right? And I think to kind of deal with that, can you get too simple? I don't know. I think if you're doing that first work, right, of really understanding your story, how you're going to fit in and going to be a good guide for somebody to, and then understanding your customer and the journey that they're on, right, then no, I don't think you can get too simple, right? I think it's just making a very clear statement like, hey, this is where you're at, right? And guess what? Look, here's some stuff that might be able to help you out, so yeah, I don't think you can get too simple necessarily. But both of those websites too, you scroll down the page, there's going to be additional resources and stuff, and there's stuff to point out, move them along to other parts of the website where you're going to dig in deeper and provide more information and resources and stuff too, and that's what it's really all about. And I think it's a great question too, because I think a lot of people I see, they try to pack too much stuff right at the top of the page and just kind of blast and overwhelms people and stuff too. And that's not really helpful. That's why I think it's important to keep it simple so that people can get a clarity of message quickly.
Okay, great. All right, so that's our digital strategy to connect with people. What about offline? What about how you interact with customers face-to-face? Do you have any tips there on how to connect with them using your story?
Yeah, absolutely. And the big thing is, right, is we certainly focus a lot on the digital media piece and stuff, right? So we try to implement the stuff, say, like on our own website, things like that. I think of Amos the Roofer and stuff, and Sunshine Roofing there. We try to do things with their social media, and we'll talk about more in a second, in the website. But I think the most important thing too, when it comes to offline, is that the messaging really needs to be consistent, right? So people can't have one experience when they come to the website and feel like, oh, okay, this is the kind of company I'm going to be dealing with. And then pick up the phone and call them and have a completely different experience, right? So that heartbeat really needs to filter through everything that you do, right? So I know with Sunshine Roofing, the way they answer the phone, when they show up and go to like, home shows in the area and stuff too, and meet potential customers there, who are looking for services for their homes and stuff, they have the kinds of interactions that really support that same kind of messaging, right? Hey, you need a quality roof. This is what you're looking forward to. We can come alongside you, and we're here to educate you and help you out and be a resource for you too. And we can build really great roofs. It's going to last you a long time. So I think that's the big thing when it comes to offline. Think about how you answer the phone, talk with your customers, all the stuff, in whatever form it might be. Maybe if you're a nonprofit, maybe you're standing in front of a group of people listening to you speak or something like that too. The messaging still needs to be the same, both online and offline. And so that's the big thing there. It's just really it's the consistency of communicating that story, that message.
Okay, so consistency in communicating the story of the message about professionalism. There's, if our online messaging is all about serving the customers, but when we answer the phone and we sound like you're really bothering me, does that conflict with our messaging that we're wanting to convey?
Yeah, absolutely.
It does.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It does. And so, sometimes we might not have to really talk about our story all the time, but but we need to make sure that it's about our customer, that we know that we're there to serve them, that they're not an inconvenience to us, whether that's how we respond, how quickly we respond to emails, how we interact with them in person or over the phone. And just to remember that, again, we are not their hero, but their guide. And
Right.
I think if we can do that, I think our customer service skills will just go through the roof. And I think people will be drawn to that, very much so.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
all
it
right,
takes,
so
it
let's,
takes the simple customer service question of how can I help you really to a whole new level. You know what I'm saying? It's really
yes, how can
important.
I help you? Yes,
That's what I'm here for. I'm
yeah,
here to help you.
yeah. Exactly, exactly. I mean, we've all had those experiences where we've gone up to a counter somewhere and the person behind it acts like, I'm asking them to move, the mountain that
Right.
is 500 miles away. And I just need a simple return or a question about the glass that's in their shop. And they just don't want to talk to me. So that makes me not want to do business with them. So consistency in our story and messaging is so important. So let's talk about social media. Okay, that's our big megaphone in our day and age, in our 21st century, whatever we're in. Social media is like the megaphone. So let's talk about amplifying that, amplifying our story using social media, because that can seem really intimidating. There's so many different platforms. There's different messaging stating that we need to be on all of them, and yet we have to do all of them well. And, sometimes we've gotten burned by social media and the fact that all of a sudden we're inundated with ads and emails saying, buy this, you need this. And so how do we authentically connect our story with our customers in a way that is beneficial for the customer and for us?
Yeah, that's great. And I think the first thing I really want to make sure we emphasize with this too is that social media isn't about selling, right? I mean, a lot of brands and stuff, I think go at it with this whole mentality of it is about selling, right? And I'll clarify that statement too by saying that you can find a lot of customers on social media, but social media isn't about selling, right? It's not called selling media. It's called social media. Social media, we're there to connect with people. And it's getting back to that whole, it's all about building trust-based relationships, right? So when I look at how, we use our social media platforms and how we help other customers use their social media platforms and stuff, we really try to stay away from the whole sales pitch, like every post I put on Facebook has got to be like, hey, by the way, buy our stuff, because it's not about that, right? And I do a lot better on social media too if I just focus on, again, thinking about my role. How can I continue to be that guide, recognize the journey that somebody else is on, right? And provide the kind of needed support there and stuff, and that's the kind of thing that's going to help me develop trust-based relationships, right? Because then I don't start going at my social media posts like, hey, come read my new blog post, or hey, check out what we got on sale right now, or hey, do this, do that. I'm not asking anything of anybody, right? I'm trying to just say, here I am to be a resource for you, right? Let's talk, and here's some thoughts that we had. Here's some cool information that you might find helpful. If you're trying to put a roof on your house, or if you're trying to build a fence, or build a website, or any of this stuff, right? How can I use it to try to connect with people? And that's, I think, probably the big mind shift that a lot of people need to make with social media. Stop trying to sell whatever it is that you're trying to do. If you're a writer, nonprofit, whatever, stop trying to sell on social media. It's a losing proposition. People get blasted with, I don't know, I forget the number, several thousand, 3,000 or 4,000 marketing messages, sales messages every day right now. You think of all the commercials you hear all day nonstop, every little ad that you see when you're on Facebook on the sidebar, and every, just not only mention what's in your news stream, and you pop over to Instagram and there's the 5 sponsored posts and stuff that you see, whatever. I mean, we're getting blasted with so many marketing messages. People become numb to it. Stop selling, and you'll probably end up selling a lot more.
Okay, I think that's really, really good. In fact, I'm probably guilty of not focusing on relationships as much as I should be with my own social media presence. And so it's such a great reminder. And I also think that I think the trap that we fall into, the reason I think instinctively we know that it's about relationships, but we also know that we have a business that needs to make money. You know, we have families that need to be supported. And so we have a tendency to fall into that. Well, if I don't sell, I'm going to be missing out on somebody. I'm going to be missing out on a sale. And so I think if we can just shift our minds from fear of missing out to let's just develop relationships, because I do think people are more interested in the story rather than in the selling. And if people know that we're interested in them genuinely, truly, heartfeltly, they're going to respond in a way that is beneficial for both seller, customer, brand, buyer, all of that. So Tell me about, though, okay, so if we've shifted our mindset to let's developing trust-based relationships, can you talk about how do we do that? Can you talk about content? What are some of the content things that we should be sharing on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or any of the social media platforms where we can have something rather than saying, hi, I'm over here, how are you? How can we still serve them and still build relationships?
Yeah, and I think the first step of that is really it's about building, especially for business and stuff too. What I really like to call the evergreen content, right? You know, and by evergreen I mean it's the kind of thing too that, you know, if we write a blog post for a small business right now, you know, that blog post is just as appropriate today as it will be 3 months from now, it'll be a year from now, 5 years from now, and stuff too. It's really always just, it's never going to go out of style, if you will, right? So the big thing is building that evergreen content that's going to connect with the hero's journey, right? You know, so again, you know, if you're a business, don't write blog posts that are sales pitches. You know, think about that whole what we were just talking about. You know, building trust-based relationships and stuff too. You know, there's going to be enough stuff on your website if you think about it for a business that's going to be sales oriented, right? You know, and really, ultimately the goal is how do I get people to my website in the first place? And you get it there by building the kind of content that people will find as a helpful resource, right? You know, and once you've got them there, you know, then hopefully you're building the trust. You know, hopefully then you can continue to transition them to say, oh, okay, well now I'm looking, this is great, this is very helpful. Now, oh, I see in the menu up here too that these guys do this, or you know, maybe I could go learn more about the services that they offer, you know, that kind of thing. So, but it's the evergreen content, right? And I want it to be evergreen because you know the type of strategy that we're talking about too is it's far too important, and you invest really too much effort in it to just say, I'm going to write a blog post for our website. I'm going to put it out there, and then you know what? 30 minutes from now, I'm never going to think about it again because I've already shared it on Facebook, or you know, whatever, right? You know, again, thinking about the roofer stuff too. You know, we have blog posts that we've produced on their website too. You know, living here in Florida. About how to make sure you're ready for hurricane season, right? You know, have you taken pictures of all the stuff inside your house? Have you checked your insurance? You know, have you done this, done that, and stuff too? And yeah, it's a roofing company, but we're trying to provide a resource that is always helpful. And you know what? Every new hurricane season comes up, that content is still evergreen. The same blog post applies next hurricane season, just like it did 3 hurricane seasons ago when we first wrote it. You know, and that kind of thing too. So we're providing that kind of helpful resource and being that guy to say, hey, yes, this is the stuff that you need to know about, hero, you know, who's protecting your house, you know, here's the stuff you need to know about so that, you know, you can be that hero. Make sure you're ready and you have a plan in case something does happen. And then, by the way, guess what? Because I was such a great resource for you, who are you going to think of if some shingles do blow off your roof, you know, or a tree goes through or something like that, and you need some repairs, you know, you're going to think about the roofing company that you've developed that kind of trust-based relationship with. So that evergreen content, connecting with the hero's journey, is where you need to be when it comes to developing that content in the first place.
That's really great. And then, so do you just share it once a year when hurricane season comes around? Following the same example, do you share it more than once? Do you share it a couple times a year? I mean, how would a business or a company, if once they've identified what their evergreen content is, how often is too much to share it or not enough to share it? I know social media moves so quickly that we can put something out there at 8 a.m. Monday and it can be gone, lost in the nether fields of all digital media by 12 o'clock noon. So how do we share it in such a way that gets it out in front of people? How much is too much or not enough?
Yeah. So there's really two levels to this. And the first one of these being, and I think we have a blog post on our blog too. It's like, how do you share your blogs on social media like a boss or something like that, whatever, right? Okay. And part of that is it's really just recognizing that, just like you said, Jessica, that all the platforms, they have their own kind of lives and stuff, something like on Pinterest, for example, has a much longer lifespan just because of how it works with the algorithms and stuff than say a tweet on Twitter, whose lifespan is maybe, I think, 3 minutes or something, if that, just because of how the feeds work and stuff like that too. It's a little bit longer on Facebook, but then Facebook also, you need to make sure it's got some of the engagement initially, which will boost it and give it a little bit longer lifespan, showing up in people's news feeds and stuff. But the big thing is that when I think about sharing content initially, when we put out a post, don't be afraid to share it on Facebook a few times. I'll share a new post on Facebook today, and I'll share it again a week from now, and I'll share it again a month from now, right? I'll share it on Twitter 4 or 5 times on the first day. I'll also share it again tomorrow on Twitter a few times. I'll share it again on Twitter a week from now, a month from now, 2 months from now, right? And with cool social media scheduling tools and stuff too, we can schedule all this stuff up. So as soon as I write a blog post, that schedule's all already in place, right? So I think that's one of the big things, and that's really kind of the first layer there of sharing that content like a boss and stuff too. I'll schedule stuff out for a couple months period, so that it reappears on certain social media platforms. But the big key there too is I'm not sharing just the same exact link with the same exact description and the text and stuff too. If I'm basically copying and pasting the same Facebook message that I shared today, I share again a week from now and a month from now or something like that, then I'm getting lost. I'm missing the point, right? I may share it in different ways, right? Maybe one time I share it as a link, maybe one time I share it as an image with a question. Whatever, I'll think of different ways to share that content across the different platforms. That's the first thing, is really just kind of sharing like a boss like that.
Okay, so what you're doing then is you're taking one piece of content and you're using it as a jumping off platform to create other bits of content. So you're reformatting it in order to keep it fresh and new on these platforms.
Yeah.
Okay.
On social media, yes. Yeah.
On social media, yes. Okay. So this is the I think there's a hidden ratio, I guess, that we could talk about, and it's this 80-20 ratio that I don't know if you've ever heard of before, but it's an 80-20. Can you talk about this 80-20 ratio, and how does that work out for a business owner who's trying to do all the things? So
yeah, and that's great. And one other thing I'll point out real quick too, even as it relates to repurposing a lot of the content and stuff as well, is it's worth noting too that I'll take a blog post and I'll turn it into a video or something like that later on as well too, and I'll repurpose it into a lot of other formats and stuff too, so that I can get more mileage out of it. I can take a blog post, create a video out of it, and throw it up on YouTube, right? And do different things like that. When it comes to sharing content, with that 80-20 rule though, is you think about what you're sharing. And again, this is not really just about sharing your own content, right? But about even sharing other content that might be helpful to people, right? As Amos the roofer, there may be, talk about hurricane tips and stuff like that too, and we have our own content on that too. But if I'm looking at the Home Depot blog, and they have, hurricane tips for preparing your home in general, for a hurricane or something like that too. That can be useful information that, that our potential clients or our followers on social media and stuff like that too can get a great deal of use out of. So we'll share that content as well too. So mix in other people's content stuff. And when we talk about that 80-20 rule too, that's the thing I think about. Is like, if you think about, the 80-20 rule, that's, out of every 5 posts you put on social media, 80% of them, or 4 of those posts, right? 4 out of 5, maybe content from other resources like that, and not your own thing, not your own self-serving purpose and stuff too. It's providing resources from other places that might be helpful, or talking about them more, in different ways and stuff too. So even as you schedule out your own content, that becomes the 1 in 5 posts that you put out on social media that you're actually talking about yourself, right? And when I say talking about yourself too, that's, there's even maybe kind of a fine fuzzy line in there too, that if I've got a blog post about how to prepare your house for a hurricane, then that's not necessarily talking about ourselves really, so there's a little fuzzy line too. I'm not putting out 80-20 to be like hard and fast, like only 1 in 5 posts could be yours, but yeah, think about that distinction. Think about how you can use other resources, and a good example of that too is when I think about Amos the Roofer and craftsmanship being a key thing there too. Now we'll share content on their social media channels pretty regularly that just have to do with great craftsmanship, right? It may not even have anything to do with a roof, but it may be how to build a great fence in your backyard or something, you know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. And just, things that kind of continue that message of good craftsmanship, high quality stuff, right? So that's a big thing, right? So when people then look at those feeds and stuff too, they can figure out, wow, doing great work is important to this guy. You know what I'm saying? That's what they're always talking about. That's what they're always sharing, and being helpful to us and stuff too. So that's what we think about. Use a lot of other content. There's some cool tools and stuff too. I like a tool called Sniply that allows us to share content from other sources, but I can put a little blurb thing, a little pop-up on the bottom that points back to their website too, so you kind of know it's coming from them, but that's not as important too. It's really just ultimately just being helpful and being out there.
So basically, people don't want a prideful guide; they want a humble guide.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's just something good to remember. Okay. But there is another way that we can amplify our story that is a biggie. Can you talk about email marketing and other messaging such as that?
Yeah, absolutely. And email really, and a lot of people, don't always believe this, the social media stuff is the hot, flashy new stuff and everything too, that everybody's all about. Email is still ultimately the one thing that probably provides more return on investment and stuff like that too than any other platform out there, and really ultimately because it's the biggest one-on-one kind of communication that we can still have, even if I'm sending out a mass email to a list. As long as I got it set up right too, I can say, oh, hey, Jessica, 1 million people are getting this email, but this one is addressed to you, Jessica. And if you reply to that, you're going to get back to Dan. So it's still probably one of the most powerful, most personal, most effective digital marketing tools out there. The oldest one there is almost, but this is probably still the most by far the most effective. So not only, and let's kind of get this part out of the way too, not only going back to that idea of the messaging needs to be consistent, right? When you think about your emails and stuff, think about who the hero is more than anything, right? And again, how maybe you are the guide helping them out on their journey and stuff in all your emails. But I even think too about, as we think about repurposing content and stuff, those tools can be useful resources to continue to further that message. Again, going to the roofer example, we put a blog post out a while back what to expect, when going through a roof repair or replacement, right? That's a tool that's on our blog post that, do I just leave it to hope that people will find it someday? Or if we get a new client, can I drop that, say, hey, just want to let you know, we're going to be coming out in 2 more days to do your roof project and stuff. Here's a link to an important blog post that we have about what to expect. So just so maybe take care of some of these things or something like that, right? So again, it's, you think about using your content stuff, to continue to position them as the hero, continue to position yourself as the guide, and provide the resources and stuff like that that people need to be able to, be the hero on their journey, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Well, any other final thoughts before we kind of wrap this up on Discovery, Connect, and Amplify? Are we good?
Pretty good. Really, just the idea that I think getting a hold of this kind of stuff and this approach is it's huge. I don't think I've ever seen anything really drive more business than really kind of getting a hold of this kind of mentality and getting it right.
All right. Well, we just want to thank you so much for being here for this webinar to 3 steps to focus your story and unlock customer growth. Remember that you are the guide and your customer is the hero. And if you can focus on that, as well as discovering your story, connecting it with your customers, and then amplifying it through the different channels on social media, online, offline, or through email marketing, I really believe that your customer growth is you're going to see what's in your customer growth. So we want to thank you so much. And if you have any questions, just let Dan or I know, dan@fistbumpmedia.com and Jessica v@fistbumpmedia.com. And we just want to thank you so much for being here today. Thanks again.
Thanks.